Hi everyone, welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm Annie, and today with us we have David Sanders, who is an associate professor at Purdue University.
Okay, ready.
All right. So I can introduce myself first, and then so I'm Annie, and I'm a rising junior in high school. I live in Illinois, and then I started this project because I noticed a lot of like misinformation, especially like during COVID and like on social media and stuff. And then I reached out to you because I saw like your article about how like each scientist like must stand up for the truth. Um, so yeah, so could you please like introduce yourself? What do you do?
Sure. My name is David Sanders. I'm an associate professor of biological sciences at Purdue University. I am in the structural biology group, so I work on the three-dimensional atomic structure of proteins.
Mhm.
I also work on how viruses get into cells. Have made some contributions in that field, especially about retroviruses and alpha viruses and Ebola virus. Hence, I have some perspective on pandemics. I currently teach the COVID class at Purdue University. I've been teaching it for 2 years. I'll be teaching again again in this fall. It involves studies about virology, immunology, but also economics, politics, sociology, and history.
Mhm.
I have a couple of patents on gene therapy or gene transfer technologies using viruses.
Uh-huh.
I also worked with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency Biological Weapons Proliferation Prevention Program in order to prevent the spread of expertise for the use of biological weapons from states of the former Soviet Union. In that capacity, I traveled to a formerly secret bioweapons lab called Vector in Siberia.
Mhm.
I'm also currently West Lafayette City Councilor, and I am running for state senate in Indiana. And the reason I'm involved in politics is because I want to bring scientific knowledge to public policy. And so that's what I've been doing for a long time. In terms of uh, COVID, but also in terms of part of what my laboratory is engaged right now, is for COVID, I've been working extensively on trying to counter misinformation and disinformation, but
Mhm.
I've also worked extensively on research integrity, specifically the institutional responses to violations thereof. And there was just an article in Nature a week or so ago about the success of some of my efforts to um, start investigations into violations of research integrity. And yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's like a lot of things that you do, which is like really cool. Um, so why did you like initially choose like this career path, like biology, so that science?
So I was interested in becoming a biochemist essentially from my freshman year in college. I very much enjoyed my freshman organic chemistry class, but
Mhm.
I thought, what's the best application of organic chemistry? And that is, in fact, biochemistry. And so I've been interested in that for an extremely long time to combine chemistry and biology, chemistry and the science of life seemed to me to be a very exciting opportunity, and so that's what I've been interested in ever since.
Nice. So, you do like a lot. What's like your favorite part of like doing what you do?
So interesting thing about doing research
Mm-hmm.
is that you have long periods of time where things don't seem to be working and it's not necessarily all that exciting because you're doing things that you've done before. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's that moment, that one moment when you have learned something that no one else on the planet yet knows. And that you have an insight into one of the secrets of the universe. That is such a rewarding moment. And
Mhm.
so you have to live for those particular moments when you've realized something before you've shared it with anyone else,
Mhm.
that there's this incredible thing that you are privy to. Now, sharing it with others is also a very enjoyable experience. Just this last week, I went to a Rotary Club and spoke about COVID and tried to, inform them about the actual facts about the virus SARS-CoV-2, which is the cause of COVID. And I often reach out to the public. I'm often invited to public events to speak about COVID, vaccination, cancer, evolution, things like that. And
Yeah,
I embrace those activities as well. And sharing the insights that I've gained in the course of my career is a very exciting part of my job as well.
for sure. Yeah, that sounds really fun. Um, so why do you think truth is like so important, and why do you think misinformation is such a big issue right now?
So the rest of society may have given up on the idea of truth, that they're more interested in persuading people or manipulating information. But scientists need to be devoted to the truth at all costs. We shouldn't be
Oh,
focused on being scientists in terms of our careers. We should be focused as scientists on discovering and conveying the truth. And again, if the rest of society isn't necessarily fully committed to that idea, as scientists, we need to be. And clearly, we want to be acting upon what science tells us. You know, I believe that most of the issues that face us as a society have a scientific or technological basis. I'm the first to admit they don't necessarily have a current scientific or technological solution. But
mhm.
unless you understand the actual science, we will be making lots of mistakes and going in the wrong direction in
Oh,
terms of public policy. But we've also had a recent example of the fact that Alzheimer's research, quite a bit of Alzheimer's research, has been based on falsified data. And that has been absolutely devastating for progress in Alzheimer's, which of course affects millions of people. So it's important for individuals and institutions to hold scientists responsible to make sure that they are conveying the truth, that they are engaged in an endeavor for society and for the propagation of the truth, not
mhm.
just for the propagation of their own careers. And lives are really dependent
Oh,
upon and lives, society, and the planet are dependent upon the conveying of truthful, correct information to the best of our abilities about the facts.
mhm. Yeah, so you said like scientists should hold each other like accountable. Um, so how do you like do that? Like, is that like through peer review? Like,
That's a great question. So, peer review is the major way that is used for determining whether an article is published, whether scientific data presented in the form of an article are published. But there's also something that I participate in besides peer review, which is post publication review. Peer reviews don't catch everything.
mm,
I will just share this with you, that paraphrasing Winston Churchill about democracy, peer review is the worst form of determining how scientific research should be published, except for all the other ones that have been tried. And I thought I had originally stated that. I found an earlier statement of that before I hadn't seen it, but I
mm,
found looking back that there are other people who have said that earlier than when I remember having said it. But still, it's true. Peer review is absolutely essential, but it's not flawless. There are lots of problems with peer review.
Mhm.
And post-publication review is an essential and critical and underappreciated part of the scientific endeavor. And institutions, that is journals and research institutions, need to be responsive to that post-publication review. And they need to put the resources in addressing the issues that the scientific community, uh, when the scientific community comments or finds flaws in
Mhm.
published research, institutions need to provide the resources to correct that literature. And I feel that that is currently inadequate. There are also flaws in the peer review process where there is discrimination that is built into the system. And I've provided alternative models of peer review that can address those forms of discrimination.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so interesting. I've never heard about that or anything. That's really interesting. Um, so what do you think, going back to like misinformation, what do you think the worst type of misinformation is? Like, misinformation about like what?
That's hard to quantify which is the worst.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I encounter it often,
Mhm.
specifically about COVID and vaccinations. I spent a lot of time through the traditional media and also social media countering those sorts of misinformation, disinformation
Mhm.
about the vaccines, about the nature of the virus, about the nature of the disease. I mean, clearly, lives were lost because of that misinformation and disinformation. But we also have misinformation and disinformation going back decades about the climate, fossil fuels, the human contribution to the creation of greenhouse gases. There's been, those are things. We've had disinformation about the effects of smoking
Mhm.
in the past. So it's not just one thing. It's not just this is worse than the other. It's a constant. There's a constant barrage of misinformation and disinformation, and I think that it's propagated by a very small minority of the population, but unfortunately, many people get exposed to that and don't necessarily, let's see, I'll get a little less light in the background, don't necessarily have the ability to discriminate between authentic information and misinformation, and that's very difficult. And I'm sympathetic to that issue, but we can't give up striving to provide the best information that's available to us. And again, science does change. And this is something that people sometimes misunderstand, which is that people say, oh, well, they said this, 30 years ago, and now they're saying that. It could be that that's actually true. Frequently, when people say that, it turns out that scientists weren't actually saying that 30 years ago. Some scientist or some media report about science said XYZ 30 years ago. The scientific community wasn't saying that. But
Um,
nevertheless, science, this is the great thing about science. It actually changes with time. Our understanding improves with time. And things that we thought were true in the past, we now know are not true. There's
mhm.
nothing wrong with that. That is the strength of science, not the weakness of science. But we have to base we have to base public policy on the best science of our time. And science is a robust endeavor, robust institution, and we need to base it. Just because science changes, we need to understand that, but we shouldn't ignore science just because it is an ongoing endeavor. We really have to listen to what science is saying
Mhm.
in order to decide how society should proceed.
Mm. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a really cool perspective. Um,
Thank
yeah, so what do you think about the invention of technology and its like impact on misinformation?
So, any technology, this is true of absolutely any technology, is
Mm-hmm.
going to have good applications and bad applications.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's always going to be the case. Now, it could be that there are very few good applications and mostly bad applications. It could be that there are mostly good applications and only a small number of bad applications. But any technology is going to have that
Yeah.
inherent. Sometimes we can actually anticipate some of the bad implications of the technology, and we should address those from the start. We should put in the safeguards from the beginning. When we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, for example, communication technologies and social media technologies, we have at our fingertips an incredible access to information that we wouldn't have had in the past. It's incredibly easy
Mm-hmm.
to access certain types of information. But at the same time, uh, there are implications. So one implication is that people rely less on, for example, their own memories and they just rely on, well, if I need some information, I don't actually have to learn it, I can just look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that that's inadequate because gaining the experience, having a knowledge base of one's own is necessary for evaluating the new information that one encounters. So that's very important. Secondarily, is a lot of the information that is out there that is available through the use of technology is not true.
Uh-huh.
And finally, we have a bias towards the information which is most readily accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily the best information, the truest information, and so on. So we because so much information is available to us so easily, we don't put in the effort often to finding the true story, the complete story, things that aren't necessarily the most prominent aspects of a particular story. And so there's all those things are to the detriment. Now we've had this issue about, for example, memory and the value of memory versus, I mean, when people started talking about books, going back, books have been a wonderful technology, but people said, oh, because we have everything written down and on books, this is damaging to people. People don't have to memorize things anymore.
Yeah.
That's true. And that that's true. But I wouldn't say, okay, we shouldn't have books because of that deleterious effect.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that we can anticipate the fact that there's extensive misinformation
Mm-hmm.
and that the internet has largely become a marketing device rather than an actual device for providing authentic information. And people need to understand that the media is extremely effective at using modern technology for marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
marketing inherently is not concerned about truth primarily. It is about getting you to consume some particular product. And unless that message is reinforced, unless people realize that all the time, that is what technology is primarily, technology is primarily being used for, is to
Mm-hmm.
market to you rather than to provide you with accurate information, uh, then I think we are going to be losing a lot of our perspective on what's truly going on in science, in society.
Mm. I see. Yeah, those were some good points for sure. So I think that's all my questions about misinformation. So just a question just for fun. Who is your role model?
That's a very interesting question, and I don't actually have a role model.
Hmm.
I There are lots of people I like. I read history all the time. I'm fascinated by history, but uh, for me, I just believe in being the best person that I can myself. So yes, I don't focus on role models. And other people want to have role models. That's good. That's important for them. But I
Hmm.
personally don't try to model myself on other people. I want to be when I die, I don't want to be asked, why, and I don't think the question is going to be, why was I not as good as somebody else? The
Hmm.
question that I think is the appropriate one, and that I hope I will be able to answer successfully is, was I the best that David Sanders could be? And that's what I strive for.
So kind of like your own role model, kind of.
I guess I don't, that's a little awkward to put it that way, but uh, I think that's the appropriate standard.
Hmm.
Is not, did you meet the expectations that someone would have for someone else? The
Yeah.
question is, did I meet the expectations that people should have for David Sanders? So, and
Um,
I hope to be able to answer that in the affirmative.
hmm. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, so just to close this out, do you have any advice for people, especially like teens?
Try to find the best information. Don't accept the first thing that you read. Really dig in and find out whether the information that you're being presented is from a good source
Hmm.
and whether it's accurate. Look at multiple perspectives when
Hmm.
you are considering information. Uh, Even though I am a critic of bad science, science is the best way for finding out about the nature of the universe, the nature of the planet. And so we should not reject science just because there are things that have changed, or there are a small number of people who are not using science to its best advantage. Uh,
Hmm.
Science really is a wonderful method for understanding uh, society, and we should be basing our decisions on the best science of our time.
Yeah, yeah. Right, thank you for that. So that will be it. Thank you so much for making this work and just for this opportunity. It was really nice talking with you.
Terrific. And please send me a link when you have posted this or edited it or whatever you've done with it.
Oh yeah, of course. All right.
All right.
So thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for reaching out. It's
Yeah,
been
for
a
sure.
pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.